Hello,
the
podcast where we
beginning.
Tokyo drift into your ass.
That's not the wrong one.
No. Jason's right. Hello and welcome to Culturally Illiterate, a podcast where four friends Tokyo drift into your ass. I am Jake, and one of my co-hosts just brought up the Super Bowl, so now I'm gonna kind of double dip on fun facts and say my football team's better than yours. Go Birds! And also because this is now redundant to you guys because you just heard this story this past weekend, but I figure it could be entertaining to anyone listening. One of the best theater experiences I've ever had was seeing Madam Web in theaters for the second time. And I'll elaborate on that in a bit, but I want to let everyone introduce themselves first. Go Birds.
Yeah, my name is Jason, and I currently have a large aluminum foil ball that I made at work the day of the NFC Championship game, and I ended up having a really good day that day, and the Eagles won the NFC Championship game, so I kept it.
It's a big ball of foil.
Because I figured it brings good luck.
If you rub it real hard on like a surface,
It'll
you could make it
out.
you can make a really smooth ball out of that.
Yeah.
Undefeated in the foil ball era.
Undefeated in the foil ball era. Yeah, so there's that. You guys couldn't see it, but I showed the co-hosts here.
I showed the
post
group.
a picture if I remember.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, post a picture of Jason's balls.
Balls on main.
But yeah, I mean, so basically, to all Eagles fans, you're welcome for my foil ball.
To all Chiefs haters, you're welcome.
To all Chiefs haters, you are also welcome. I mean, so football fans, right? Hey.
Yeah.
That said, fuck the Chiefs and go Birds. Still.
Go Birds.
Always.
Herb.
You know, quick side note before we go on with the introductions. It's really funny because when we used to record all in the same spot, the way we were sitting, I could see Jake and Sean, but I couldn't see Matt. And now it's like, it reminds me of that because in the Skype call, I can see Jake and Sean, but Matt doesn't have a camera.
Maybe I should get a better monitor. Hi, I'm Matt Wong. I apparently talk too much. And what was it? My fun fact is that I don't remember it because I was occupied doing something else. So we can move on.
Gonna kill Matt eventually. Hello, my name is Sean. My fun fact is that I have a koozie on my desk. Since we're doing show and tell, I have a koozie on my desk that is shaped like a red zip like a red button up
a flannel.
Like a flannel, and it's filled with like 20 something goats.
I don't know about the goats, but my fiance gave you that.
It's filled with goats currently.
Oh,
this is a very tiny. It's filled with very tiny goats.
I like the tiny.
Do we want to know why you have 20 tiny goats?
It was so that my fiance would she gave them to me as a dowry.
Oh, that makes sense. That tracks.
I thought it was the classic, 20 goats for good luck.
20 goats for good luck.
Classic, yeah.
Everyone knows.
Anyone got any? I know Matt has a rec.
Yes, I do.
I
I guess I'm getting into it. So,
I do
know
have
that
a rec,
works.
but Matt can go first.
So I have a rec. So I've been listening to a lot of Mac Miller recently, and Balloonerism is fantastic. I did not know there was this like whole lore behind this album about how like this was just like this was a project that released how long ago? Like nearly a decade ago, and he just shelved it.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then how like it slowly became leaked online, and now we got an official release. And despite something that Mac made so long ago, it sounds like something he'll make like right now, like post Circles. Something very experimental. something very like more R&B focused rather than hip hop, and it's wonderful. It's so soothing, and it helps me go to sleep in like a nice way because it's so peaceful. It's very nice. It's very mellow, and so I recommend giving it a listen. Also, although it will make you sad at times, so just give you a heads up.
It's
Yeah,
okay, Matt, your existence makes me sad.
I gotta get into that record because I've heard some of it, but I haven't given it a full listen yet.
Oh, it's so good, Jason. It's so good.
I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I'm admittedly I was a little bit late to the Mac Miller train.
Yeah,
but
I was also
unfortunately, but he did make some great music.
He did,
and
also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, and I remember it was Circles was the posthumous album,
yes,
right?
It was the first one, the first posthumous album.
Yeah, and well, first of all, I want to shout out like his estate for being one of the few times that like posthumous music has been handled well, I think.
See, that's exactly what I was gonna say, so I don't need to cut it anymore.
Yeah, so like, yeah, absolutely. Like most of the time, they just milk people dry after they pass away, and it's really sad and disgusting.
Juice WRLD.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah. Anywho, Mac Miller, great musician all around. He produced a lot for other people too. Just an amazing musician, and from everything I've heard, a great person. So I would double down on that rec without even having fully heard that album. That said, I also have my own rec if unless Matt has more to say.
Nope.
No, you're not allowed to give your rec anymore. I've revoked it.
Okay, my bad. I'm gonna give it anyway.
Fuck you.
Counterparts. I'm gonna see them soon. I'm gonna see them this Sunday, which isn't this Sunday to you guys, but I'm gonna see them this Sunday anyway. And their EP, Heaven Let Them Die, is arguably one of the best things they've released, I think. I'm a little biased because I love them and I love everything they put out, but I love it nonetheless, and I think that you should listen to it because the Counterparts are the best, and Brendan is the best. And I also, going forward with that, just go see a hardcore show or a punk show. That's my other rec. Everyone should. It's, it's fun. It's a good time. Support music, live music.
Argument. Football, watching sports with friends, and Philly sports.
I also recommend that.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Jalen Hurts is
Super
elite.
Bowl champions.
Top 5.
I don't think I have a rec this week. You know what? I did see Companion, and that was pretty good. So you know what? I'll give that a rec. I love Jack Quaid has a special weird place in my heart.
Sorry, I was just about to ask if that was the one with Jack Quaid.
The superior Quaid.
The superior Quaid.
I tend to agree.
All right. And on the case that anybody listening cares, since I teased it, even though you guys have already heard this, you did seem to get a kick out of this story, or at least Jason did. So I want to elaborate on why I saw Madam Web in theaters 2 times. Real quick, mostly to like semi-clear my. I think this kind of clears my name.
No, it doesn't.
I saw it once because I just like to see it, even if it's bad. I like to go see that stuff in theaters. It's just it's fun to me. I got a kick out of even the bad ones most of the time. So we were dealing in my apartment with some holes in our bathroom floor underneath our tub. And it took several tries for our building people to fix it because they're all very bad at what they do. Specifically the office people. I had to evacuate when this was being done. Every time I had to leave my apartment for all day. Every time this was being done, take off work because I have I work from home, and leave because of fumes. So this was the second or third time I had to leave my apartment for what was supposed to be a one-day fix. to get away from the fumes. And I like to this is details that aren't needed, but to get into my headspace, I like to shower usually early in the day where I feel really gross, but I couldn't do that because they had to tear up the tub floor and my bathroom floor. So I'm already in a funk. I'm off. I had to burn a PTO day. I'm tired, and I was like, let me go to the movies. That'll kill a few hours, and I also was like kind of grumpy and stressed, so I took a little bit of an edible because I have. Listen, I mean, like I don't do it recreationally too, but I have my medical card, and that shit's good for when you're anxious. So I took a little bit of an edible and walked to the movies. I was originally going to see Dune Part 2, which I had already seen and loved, but I was very tired, and I felt like if I went into Dune Part 2 in Dolby and drifted to sleep, it would be disrespectful to a masterpiece. So I walked into Madam Web instead, and I honestly don't remember. It may have been only me, but there was max 3 other people there, and I watched Madam Web a little bit high, falling in and out of sleep, and it was like I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up and it felt like I'd been out for hours, and somehow the movie was still seemingly at the same place it was when I fell asleep. And I was asleep, but I was also locked in. It was like I was no longer in reality for a little bit. And at one point, I woke up and I thought I peed myself. I had not. But there was a moment where I woke up and my seat was warm. The seat warmer was on, and I was just like, how long have I been asleep, and did I pee my pants?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it was truly, usually my great theater experiences are like going to see a fun movie with friends, or like a couple of times seeing like Infinity Pool or Barbarian and sitting next to a stranger and bonding over like, what the fuck did you see that? No, this time it was basically by myself. Wasn't even awake the whole time, but it was an experience I haven't had before or since. Like, metaphysically.
Not many people think they pee themselves at Madam Web.
I don't know how to explain it, but I was just so like, there was like, I like to get lost in a movie, but I was really lost in that movie, I think because of the fact that I wasn't awake.
Would you say it was transcendent?
Kinda.
Was it melancholic?
No, it was a good time. It was weird. It was like I forgot.
Matt, why would that experience be sad?
It was great. And then I came home and my bathroom still wasn't fixed, and I was mad again. But yeah.
Was it melancholy?
I just felt like I do think that clears my name a little bit. It's not like I just like went to go see Madam Web twice because I don't watch other things.
I just opened a dictionary and said the first that he opened up to.
He just happened to open to the ME section.
As if I have a dictionary.
That's funny, man. Was it melancholy?
Another movie I would love to in a theater though is today's topic. How's that for a segue? I think that's one of my better ones. June 6, 2003 marked the release of Too Fast, Too Furious, the first sequel to The Fast and the Furious, and the start of, in my opinion, the greatest franchise naming convention in history. It's written by Gary Scott Thompson. Sorry, I had to mute my mic to burp. Michael Brandt and Derek Haas. Directed by John Singleton and shot by Matthew F. Leonetti. Paul Walker returns as Brian O'Connor, and we're introduced to new core members of the Fast family, with Tyrese Gibson as Roman Pearce and Ludacris as Tej Parker. Rounding out the main cast is Eva Mendes as Monica Fuentes. Hey, that kind of rhymed. Cole Hauser as Carter Verone, Tom Barry and James Remar as Agents Bilkins and Markham, and Devin Aoki as Suki.
Yeah, this is the movie where we're introduced to my comfort character.
Your goat?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about while watching this movie. I was like, well, that's like a common thing that I see on Twitter, like, comfort characters, right? And I never necessarily like had thought
Wait,
about it.
well,
No, I never really I just saw comfort character as like an online meme and shit, and I never really gave it much thought. Then I was watching this and I was like, low-key, Roman Pearce is my comfort character. He's so funny.
Please elaborate.
He's absurd. He's an absurd character, and that's my favorite thing. Above all else, what makes me happier than anything else is an absurd, funny character. And that's what I feel like he is. I mean, he comes into this. We are introduced to him by him immediately fighting his childhood friend in the dirt. Like, that's just, come on, man. And as we'll talk about the rest of this franchise, we'll dive into some of the outlandish things he says and does that I love and make me so happy and just make me laugh every time. Including but not limited to a plane that we'll see him, a private jet plane that we'll see him in a future film. I believe it says it's Roman bitches on the plane. And that's, again, a story for another day, but God, it's just, I really feel like when they made Roman, they were like, they just wanted to jam absurd characteristics into a person.
I couldn't remember how funny this movie was, but this one was like, because it's the introduction of Roman and Tej, it makes me so happy for one.
Yeah, and I also love Tej. Let me not get it twisted. And Roman would not be the same without Tej. That said, I'm partial to Tyrese Gibson.
Yeah,
Also,
they met each other. They met each other, but they didn't know they were about to be besties.
Yes, exactly.
And this is also, for my money, in a franchise that is loaded with a lot of, I have to believe some of it's intentional, but I also have to believe some of it's not intentional, homoeroticism.
Oh, yeah.
This takes the number one spot. As Jason said, Tyrese, I mean, we'll get into it, but like you introduced to Rome through him wrestling and Brian in the dirt and pulling at each other's shirts, and Rome really takes any excuse he can to take his shirt off.
Exactly.
The fucking scene where they're like going up to a car in like an impound lot, and like Roman just takes off his shirt to punch through the window, but the door is unlocked.
That was so funny.
I remember that.
It's like, what are you doing, buddy? And this is exactly what I mean when I say he's just an absurd character. I love him so much. God, he makes me so happy.
So the movie follows now ex-LAPD officer Brian O'Connor, who has escaped to Miami after the events of the first Fast movie, while Dom, who's not in this one, is in Mexico after aiding wanted felon Dominic Toretto in his LA escape from the authorities. There's also a little prequel, like a couple-minute long dialogue-less short film called The Turbocharged Prelude to Too Fast, Too Furious, which follows Brian's trip to Miami. Fun fact. He makes a living off of street racing, driving I'm going to keep reading, as long as these plot descriptions keep having the cars I don't care about, I'm going to still read them. A 1999 Nissan R34 Skyline GTR, an event organized by his friend, the mechanic Tej Parker. Brian is arrested following a race, but his former boss, FBI Special Agent Bilkins, and Customs Enforcement Agent Markham offer a deal to clear his record in exchange for going undercover to help arrest the drug cartel lord Carter Verone. Brian agrees on the condition that he gets to choose his partner, deciding on his strange childhood friend Roman Pearce. Initially, Roman distrusts Brian for being...
Wait, did you describe him in the description as strange?
Estranged. He's a strange childhood
I
friend.
did not hear
I also heard strange, but it was kind of true. So then I just let it pass.
Part, and I was like, well, I agree.
Maybe I misspoke. I don't know, but you're right. It is true. His estranged childhood friend Roman Pearce. Initially, Rome distrusts Brian for being a cop and for not preventing his own prior arrest, but nonetheless agrees for the same record-clearing deal. Back in Miami, customs agent Monica Fuentes, who was undercover working for Verone, gets them an audience. After a test in which Brian and Roman beat 6 other drivers to retrieve a package from Verone's car in an impound lot, they get a job to bring a package to Verone in the Florida Keys. During the test, Markham believes they're fleeing and nearly compromises their cover by meeting them at the lot. To prevent Markham from undermining the next job, Brian and Roman acquire a 1969 Yanko Camaro SYC and a 1970 Dodge Challenger RT in a pink slip race from 2 of the drivers who lost Verone's test. Anyway, so I think the main thing, honestly, for the whole movie, the main thing that I have anything to say about are Roman and Tej, because I think those are both great additions who will show their faces again and become regular members of the cast, the family.
The family. I like their introductions here. It feels nice, and like it's weird to look back at this movie after having seen everything and to be like, oh, they're here, to like feel excited about them like coming in. Because before, when I was first watching these with all of us as a group, I was like, everybody who came in, I don't know if they're going to stay or not, because beforehand, I didn't really care or pay attention to the Fast and Furious franchise. But now, like, looking back at this movie, I can be, like, so pumped that I get to see Roman and Tej come back. I actually kind of liked Suki in this one, too, as, like, an odd, fun side character that just does weird shit. Like her whole cars are weirdly designed, but also the fact that she has some fun one-liners of saying "move, bitch" and other things,
which is a reference to a Ludacris song.
Yep,
and Ludacris is in this movie,
and also Tej just looks like Ludacris. I agree, though. I like Suki a lot. I'm kind of sad she's not someone who came back, because she had a lot of like a good cocky energy. And
yeah,
I looked it up. Devin Aoki doesn't act anymore. She retired from acting after she had kids, and I'm kind of sad because I was kind of holding out hope that maybe one day we could get even a Suki cameo.
That is sad. She definitely emits a lot of confidence. I do really like that about her.
She's much better than I think the most like dead fish of a character that this franchise has ever given us has got to be Monica, though. She's just kind of there. She's been undercover with Verone for a long time and like lives at his like compound with him, and there's even like kind of a subplot about them being concerned that she may have like gone rogue and that she just legit works for him now, but that's never really explored that well, and I don't think there's ever any real tension that she is.
Well, it's not really explored that well, and it's kind of been resolved. It kind of got resolved fairly quickly.
They explore it in like one conversation, and then they're like, "Okay, she's not."
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of feels like they have to like someone in the writers' room was like, "Oh, wouldn't they naturally be a little concerned given how long she's been undercover?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll throw a sentence in there." She doesn't really have much of a character to her. She's just kind of, I don't even call her a romantic interest to Brian because they don't really have any chemistry. And frankly, again, kind of playing into what we talked about with the relationship between Rome and Brian, who the way Rome says Brian scratches an itch in my brain. Nobody else says that word quite the same. But she's kind of just there to show up.
Getting me.
Yeah, I'm getting you. But every time she's on screen, she walks into a scene and Brian's with Rome like gets huffy and storms off, which is hilarious. But she's literally just there to make Rome act jealous.
Yeah. She's there to make him jealous because she's talking to his boyfriend.
She definitely feels like a little bit of a, like, I know that she's essentially in there to give him like another love interest and act as eye candy, but like for Brian, I mean, but like, yeah, it leads to the situation of her not having much character. And also, like, most of the time they, like, show her on screen anyways. She's, like, undercover anyways. So, like, you really don't get to see, like, who she is when she's not undercover. Aside from, like, the few times she flirts with Brian. which is that's it. So like I just don't care for her that much in the end. If anything, the main thing for me that pushes this movie is always Roman and Brian's relationship throughout the whole thing, because like I think Roman makes a much better character to me than Brian in the end. I find Roman much more fun to deal with, and Brian to me comes off a little boring half the time. I won't deny that.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's just probably the most chronically underwritten of the like semi-important fast characters. She doesn't really have an arc of her own, nor does she particularly serve anyone else's. And even like from a plot perspective, if you plucked her out and it was just like you could just have, the agents come find Brian, tell him we need you to infiltrate this place. He, picks Rome as his partner. Movie goes the exact same. It's a shame. I think Ava Mendes does like a decent job in the role. I think she's well cast for like what that role would be if it was actually fleshed out. But I don't know. She as far as chemistry goes, she's doesn't have as much as we had between Brian and Mia last movie, and she definitely doesn't have as much as we had between Brian and Rome in this movie.
Yeah, I think
it's one of those things. Like I think she's on paper good for that role, but it's underwritten, and she just doesn't. She can't compete with Rome.
Yeah, nope. I think it also suffers that, like, again, it's like if you plucked her out of the movie, there's nothing that really changes all that much other than like you get rid of the romantic interest. And on top of that, I feel like it also doesn't help that most of the time she's away from like. She's not as involved with the rest of the story as the other characters are, which, like you said, leads to like this whole underwritten portion to her. So it sucks that like I feel like she doesn't serve the story in the way, and I don't mean that she needs to serve the story, but the story doesn't serve to her as it does to the other characters, which is disappointing. And at least we get to see more of her later anyways, but like, yeah.
It is really sad though that even though she is framed to be at least like a main supporting cast, right? She has less character than the Soprano ripoff henchman that you see in the movie. It's really sad. Because Eva Mendes is a very good actress, and the fact that she's not utilized very well is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, this movie, I don't know, Fast Forward gets pretty bad at this too, but I enjoy this movie, but it's definitely where it kind of bottoms out in terms of, I think, character. Well, I should say, at least for writing of women, maybe, because I actually do kind of, I was going to say character writing in general, but I do like the arc Brian has in this movie. I think it's fun watching him be on the one on the run from the law now, and kind of settling into that life, that to the point of even by the end he's not acting as faux hardened, I think, but is still like they steal some of the money from Verone away from the LAP for the Miami PD. Like he seems to have kind of embraced what his life is now. So I actually do like his arc. So
yeah, but I think this character is just mainly like what was it? It's mainly just chemistry, because it's fun to see Brian and Roman interact, and not just interact with each other, but interact with the other characters. They just seem to have like really nice chemistry that you like watching, and so that's what really gets me invested in his movies. Not really the writing. Oh God, it's not the villain either, but it's just watching these characters interact. That's the fun of it. Also, the racing, like the racing is also pretty good. Like they usually is filmed with very high energy. The sound design is, of course, is pretty good. That's kind of what you need for like one of these Fast and Furious films. But yeah, like the racing was very entertaining. I like the opening race a lot. I love this, like the sound effect they play every time they hit the nitro. It just, I don't know. It just sounds like they're hitting like another gear, and it's like it sounds so futuristic, but it sounds so raw. It's really cool. I like that sound a lot.
Me too, and I'm a sucker for the like now dated CGI when they take you like
Oh
inside
yeah, when they take the
car.
Oh my
turns.
god, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's back
Never
in those
gets old for
days
me.
See
in
all of
which,
it. It's the
honestly,
best.
like I still like that because
It
obviously
has its
they
own
limited it
special
because of the
style.
limit. Yeah, I like it though because they obviously didn't. They obviously knew that the technology wasn't there to make like elongated shots, and so they had like half a second to like a second cut, and then they go back to like a practical shot. I wish they still did that because with
Yeah,
today's
Sim. Like if they did that for
technology,
Fast 11, I'd be happy.
exactly, because if they do that with today's technology, they could probably make it seamless because
Oh yeah.
with today's technology, it's really hard to tell if something's CGI or not within like half a second to like a second cut, you know.
Yeah.
But this
Yeah,
movie
they could
coming out,
definitely make it look cool if they did the same thing this today's age.
hmm yeah, but
Yeah,
with this movie coming out so many years ago, you
Yeah, but it's still
can't do
sick.
that much.
I'm kind of agreeing with everything you're saying, though, Matt, because I think you're right. Like this movie does a good job with a lot of the side characters. It definitely feels like the way the first one, I gave it a lot of credit for feeling like I feel like it seems true and lively to like an LA street racing culture, and this one feels like it's true to like a Miami street racing culture. Again, I have no actual real exposure to that, but it's like distinct enough from the first movie that it doesn't feel like they copy and paste it, even though it's a completely different coast. But it feels lived in. Seeing them like I think the best racing scene is like the opening race with where Paul wins the race. Brian wins the race, I guess you should say, of course. I think that's where
Paul.
Suki says move bitch. But you see them like have this whole like plan in place for to like fake shut down the roads. And there's just a lot of banter between all the people that it's like, oh yeah, they all know each other. This is a real space. These are real people. They have actual relationships and friendships and rivalries. But also what you said, I think this is a really weak villain. The first movie didn't have a tremendous villain either, but I think this one's even weaker.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't even remember the villain until I watched it this time, to be honest. Like
The
I
thing
just
I
thought
most
of him
remember
as
about the
like he came into it and I was like, "Oh, yeah." Like, and I love this movie too, don't get me wrong. This is like I always say this is one of the funniest Fast movies.
the thing I
But
mostly remember about the
I
villain
just
goes
don't
back to Rome
it,
because Rome has a running bit where he keeps trying to steal his cigar cutter.
yes, which is
Yeah, that was.
which is so fucking funny. And that's another thing. It's just like so random. Like why is he so set on doing this?
Him
I
doing
love him.
the first time he steals it, and he's just like, I just thought you had like 12 more of these things.
I just thought he had like, and to be fair, he probably does. He's rich.
Exactly. When I first saw the villain, I'm not gonna lie, I immediately thought like he could be cast in the Jersey Shore. Like
Pretty much.
that single thought just ruined the entire villain. I couldn't take him seriously. It doesn't help that he's like pretty bare bones and he's pretty stereotypical of like like a gangster leader. But
Yeah,
it can ruin
villain.
I can't take him seriously anymore after that single thought. I ruined it for myself, and I intend to do that.
Yeah, the villain doesn't do any heavy lifting in terms of uh making this movie enjoyable. It's just, you know, he's a role player. He does just enough.
Exactly. He exists just to move the story along.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the main cast is what actually. See, that's the thing is like with the exception of the villain and what's her name? Eva Mendes's character,
Monica.
Monica. Uh, with the exception of those two, like I think all the new characters in this one are pretty great. Like I love them all, or at least like
Yeah,
them all. And it's like that's kind of tough to do when you have like a successful first movie with like likable characters and cast to like have almost none of them return in the second one and then still have most of them be likable and enjoyable. And like even Monica isn't not it's not that she's not a likable character, it's just that she doesn't have much purpose in the script.
Yeah, even the ones that aren't like obviously we like Rome a lot. I'm a big Tej guy too. I think Ludacris is really funny as Tej, and he doesn't actually spend that much time with Rome in this movie, which is kind of funny because like in subsequent films they become quite the duo, and I'm glad they found that. But it's found out that those two guys have good comedic timing together.
It's
but
like
I like Tej. He's
Florian
funny
Balde.
in this. He's a different kind of funny too. He's a lot more understated than Rome, versus Rome is like big and silly and kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, they have really good chemistry because you're right. Tej is he's very mellowed out, while while Roman is like over the top and very sarcastic. It's a very good duo.
And there's also something cool we haven't seen before in that he's a mechanic and he's involved in the street racing stuff, but he's not really a driver. Like I know there was guys like Jesse who was not necessarily involved in stealing the DVD players in the first one, but he was still a driver. He was still kind of more part of the crew. Tej's character is interesting because he's like a resource, and this kind of continues throughout the franchise, but he's like a resource for the rest of the team. But he's not a street racer. He's just not. And I think that makes him stand out.
I also like that their whole thing was that like he did it once too, and that he slammed into a wall and then he said never again.
Yeah. Didn't he say he went like 120 miles per hour into a wall or something like that?
Which realistically, if he did that, he wouldn't be telling that story.
I mean, those seatbelts must be damn good. Maybe it was a Subaru.
Even the like bit parts, like the two guys that play Agent Bilkins and Agent Markham, I think they both kind of look and have the like gravitas of like very serious FBI agents that don't trust. They don't do anything special, but they're just well cast. The two goons that work for Verone are much more memorable than him, even though their names apparently are Orange Julius and Slapjack. I couldn't have told you that, but they're pretty funny and they play off of Brian and especially Rome really well. We already talked about Suki. There was another dude. I'm looking through the cast list. That Jimmy, played by Jin Na Yang. He was another guy that has his shop who just has a couple scenes, but I remember him being right, and he has a few lines with like the leads, and it feels like this is their buddy, and they all do a good job with that. It's just a really generic villain and a really generic. I don't even think it's appropriate to call Monica a love interest, but I'm really isn't that what Ja Rule yells in the first one, Monica?
Yes.
Because every time I say it, I want to go, Monica!
He absolutely does. Monica! Yeah.
I do like that one agent.
How could we
I think
forget?
his name is Agent Bilkins.
Yeah, Bilkins.
I love the fact that, when Brian and Roman were fighting in the dirt, he just sat on his side and started eating popcorn.
Yeah. He didn't give a fuck.
He didn't give two
let him
fucks.
fight.
And then when they were done, he was like, "Is it over? Are you guys done?" That guy like didn't give two shits. I love his attitude.
Yeah,
I also like
that was the
Brian,
homie.
Brian telling Roman that he can't fight. He just goes, "You suck at fighting," and then continues to punch him.
they're basically siblings.
Yeah, they do. They have like half the time they have sibling energy, and half the time they have like lover energy.
Yeah, they just keep trashing each other all the time. Every single opportunity, they take it.
It feels weird hearing that sentence come from my brother, though.
Hey man, I don't make the rules.
Just come up with them. We get one to move the plot along a little bit, since we were kind of talking about the villain though. The one kind of good scene with him is it's pretty nasty. So they're at a nightclub and he finds out about a rat in his organization who's informing the police or is an undercover officer, and he puts rats in a metal bucket, puts them on this guy's like torso, and then heats the bucket so the rats dig through his chest to try to get out. And that is probably the most like you don't see anything gory, but it has got to be the most like fucked up and graphic thing in any of these movies. It's kind of out of left field how like the torture
It's just
scene.
like conceptually very
Yeah,
macabre.
yeah.
Like,
Well, you
what
can
the
picture. You
fuck?
don't need to see it. It would be gratuitous to show it.
Yeah.
But it's like the only scene where you're like, oh, Verone's kind of scary, and then after that he becomes so generic again. You just forget.
Wasn't it just one rat though? Because I remember he lifted the bucket and it was just one single rat.
One rat, multiple. That's you get my point. My point remains, no matter how many rats
Yeah, I
there
was
were.
gonna say, I think one rat still does the trick.
That's like one rat. That's pussy shit. I have rats eat through my stomach on a daily basis. So yeah, he does that. He tortures corrupt Miami police detective Whitworth into giving his men a window to make their getaway. Verone then threatens Monica, whom he saw speaking affectionately to Brian earlier at the club, and got jealous. I like to believe he's also jealous of Monica because he's also on. I like to believe it's another Rome situation. Everyone just wants to fuck Brian.
Well,
Brian
look at
and
him.
Rome. This movie also gives me maybe my favorite Paul Walker moment in the entire franchise.
Oh yeah.
Where he tells Rome to forget about it, cuh.
I said forget about it.
Oh, God.
I said forget about it, cuh.
It's not
he's
even just
dialed in.
it's not even
has
just the
found this
fact.
character by this point.
Oh, absolutely. But it's not even just him saying forget about it, cuh. It's the way he says it. It's the tone that he puts on it. And I said forget about it, cuh. Like he has such a like way of
Swagger.
saying it that it's like it's like he has such zest and swagger to it that it's like
The one thing I do want to mention that I completely forgot about that I don't know why I laughed at it was when Roman goes into the nightclub before that whole like torture scene, and he goes and looks at all of the people in there and goes, "It's a oasis." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
This is one of the most dialed in comedy performances I've ever seen. Like, I'm not joking. Tyrese Gibson is so on point with every line delivery and every facial expression. The whole movie.
and throughout the franchise.
Like, Rome is an absolute menace in every meaning of the word.
He is a treasure.
We're not there yet, but when he says, "What ejectocito," cuz when he
Oh,
launches
God.
a guy out of his
Oh,
car,
yeah.
he looks at, he's got the goon in his
Ejectocito,
car, and he's like, and they pull the trick on him, so they
Ejectocito.
don't realize they're actually working for the cops yet. And he just looks at the guy and goes, "Ejectocito, cuz," and launches him out of the fucking car. And I lost it every time I've seen that scene.
That's so funny, man.
Ooh, and Brian, you know what's another cool Brian scene? The stare and drive.
Oh,
That would work on me.
like the
100%. That would
They
work
stop
on
at the
me.
light and Roman's like incredibly pissed.
And then Roman's mad that he used the stare and drive on someone else. And
The
he
sexual
does this.
chemistry is ridiculous, man.
This to me is like the start where the series starts to become like a special thing. I feel like this is the movie that like drew me in on
Yeah.
most of it, because the first one's still good, but the second one you start to see like the characters start to have like the weirdest, like most incredible like chemistry I've ever seen from
Yeah.
like actors before. So it just like it meshes so well, and it makes me want to stick with it so much because it's so bizarre how well these people get along, and I just want more. I want more of those characters doing stupid shit together.
It kind of helps that, I think. Like, personally, I like this movie. I like it a lot. I much prefer the first Fast and Furious. But I think that what really cements it as, like, oh, I'm locked in for the series, is it immediately becomes apparent how drastically different in tone these things can swing from one to the next, because it's not even like the first movie's ultra serious, and it's easy to discount the change in tone from Better Luck Tomorrow, since that was not like originally, it was just an indie movie. But the first movie takes itself relatively seriously. Like, it's a good time, it's an action movie, it doesn't think it's deeper than it is, but it largely treats itself kind of like a crime drama. with added like heightened action and cars. And this movie is a comedy. It's just kind of a screwball comedy. And I think it's so you're like, oh, I'm in for a ride. There's not 10 of these things and they're all the same, because this is not the same movie.
Yeah, and I feel like this is the one where it really starts to like lean into the goofy side. Like the first one has its goofy moments for sure, but this is the one where it starts to like really, I feel like, try to be like, all right, let's make something like big and out there. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah,
one's
they lean into
this
their
one's
strengths.
starting to get a little bit more into like the craziness and the just like stupid action movie.
It's also the only one where Rome gets to be a lead, which is pretty fun, because after this he is kind of subjected to being a more of the supporting cast. Like, he's still important. He's still in a bunch of these, but this is the one where he gets to be kind of number 2 on the call sheet, and he really makes the most of it. To the point of I kind of wish, like, if I had it my way, we would get a Rome spinoff and let him be a lead again.
Yeah, it does
Preferably
kind
with
of.
Tej.
That isn't something I really thought about, and it does make me kind of wish that like he got to have his own spotlight again, because like I could do with a spin-off of just Roman and Tej. I could live with that. That would make me happy. We have Hobbs and Shaw, and that's fine, but I could fall in love with Roman and Tej.
I could see that as a sitcom, deadass, like just like a 13-episode season sitcom of the two of them being like temporary roommates and doing silly spy missions together.
That's basically, you almost described Fast and Furious. Was it 9? I think it's 9. Well, they had like their own little side adventure, a little side plot about how they're invincible.
Yeah, but I could do a whole movie or show about that. I really love them. Tej gets a great line too at the end. I know my tags are out of date, but damn, when they use him to like lead the cops away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie. There's a lot of good funny moments that like really are funny even on rewatch, which is saying a lot. Comedy, I think, is the easiest thing to be hurt by rewatch sometimes, because it's just like you see the punchline coming.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Also, depending on what comedy it is, it can be really, really dated.
Yes.
And this one, to me, doesn't feel as dated. It's still got some things in there.
This is just boys being silly for the most part, though.
But this one is just boys being silly.
That's what I was going to say. It's mostly, for the most part, it's just like, them being dickheads.
Yeah, just the boys being
really, the most dated thing is Race Wars.
that
and the male gaze.
You know, and I really don't think that that's dated, because I think that was probably
you think it was a bad idea then?
Time. You know, like I don't think it's that aged poorly. I think it, came out the oven expired.
That's a good point. So Brian and Rome visit Tej and his crew and arrange a diversion during their drive to the Keys, as well as having the crew remove trackers from their cars. One morning, Brian wakes up to find Monica in his house. She warns him that the drop will take place in an airfield and that Verone intends to kill them once it's complete. Enrique and Roberto arrive. I guess that's Flapjack and Orange Julius. I don't know. I didn't see those names in the cast list. Looking for her and a confrontation. It's the goons, the villain's goons. You guys are my goons. Different kind. Looking for her, and a confrontation ensues before Verone arrives to defuse the situation, with Monica escaping beforehand to seemingly save her cover. On the day of the job, Brian and Rome split the money between their cars and leave. Whitworth eventually sends the Miami Police Department, and a chase ensues. After Whitworth believes they're fleeing with the cash, the pair lead the police to a warehouse where a scramble is organized by Tej, causing chaos. That's where the aforementioned Tej line I love came from. Brian and Roman elude the police in muscle cars, while Tej and Suzuki clearly going back. Brian and Roman elude the police in muscle cars, while Tej and Suzuki
You
detained
called
and
her
driving the
Suzuki.
GPS tagged
wait.
vehicles to lead the cops away. What did you just say to me?
I said you called her Suzuki.
You called her Suzuki.
No.
That's something I
Math, I'm not.
do, Jake.
It's okay when you do it. As Brian approaches the airfield, Enrique orders him to detour to a marina. Wait, I don't know if I. Okay, sorry, I gotta reset. Brian and Roman lead the police in muscle cars while Tej and Suki, another street racer, are detained driving the GPS tagged vehicles away, to lead the cops away. As Brian approaches the airfield, Enrique orders him to detour to a marina. At the same time, Roman ejects Roberto from his car with the improvised ejection seat using nitrous oxide. At the airfield, customs surround the plane and realize they've been duped. At the marina, Verone reveals he was aware of the undercovers. At the marina, Verone reveals he was aware he was under surveillance and gave Monica false information. Verone orders Brian be killed and Monica onto his private yacht, intending to use her as leverage. But before Enrique can kill Brian, Roman arrives and the pair incapacitate him. Verone flees aboard the yacht, but is intercepted when Brian drives the Yenko off a ramp and crashes onto the deck of the boat. That actually may be the coolest car thing in this. Not the first race. But onto the deck of the boat, Brian, Roman, and Monica are incapacitate and subdue Verone. The deal upheld, Markham clears Brian and Roman's records, and Roman hands over Verone's cash. Brian and Roman agree to stay in Miami and open a garage together, funded by a cut of the cash they've secretly kept for themselves. Okay, first thing I want to point out, this movie ends with Brian and Monica never getting together, and Rome and Brian walking off giggling together, holding a bag of money.
Well, that one was funny because like they bring it back to when Roman stole the clippers from the rich guy, and they just go, my pockets aren't empty, and then Roman lifts up his shirt and he's got all these wads of cash in his pants. It's like, perfect, I love this.
Yeah, he was like, we ain't hungry no more. Pulls up his pants, lines thousands of dollars on his belt line.
I forgot about that too, the whole thing where you keep saying, we hungry.
We hungry.
Yeah, and he didn't get his cigar cutter, but he did get, he can buy a few cigar cutters now.
I was like, he can buy some fancy ass cigar cutters with that money.
I'm gonna say a hot take, and you guys will not. You got to listen to what I'm really saying with this take, because you got to hear me out. You're not gonna like it initially. You got to think about it. This movie gave us Rome. This movie gave us Roman Pearce, and I love Roman Pearce. And for the long term of Fast and Furious, that was for the best. But in isolation, without the benefit of, hindsight, future sight, I guess, since you're talking about movies that hadn't happened yet when this was made, as just a sequel, this movie itself would have been better if it was Dom instead of Rome.
I think
realistically, it would have made sense for Dom to be there instead.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it should have been. I feel like it would have gone a good way to establish more of Brian and Dom's relationship later on, especially considering how much they love each other later. However, I love Roman. Fuck you.
Again, knowing that we, how many of these things there subsequently was, how many more opportunities we got to see Brian and Tom, as well as being able to now continue using Roman Pearce as a character, the right call. But at the time, it is very clear to me that this script was written, and then Vin Diesel was shooting Riddick or whatever the fuck, or Triple X, whatever the hell he was shooting, and they couldn't get him back, and they said, okay, let's keep the core of the script the same, we need to come up with a new character. And a Roman Pearce. It feels very apparent to me, because I do think you would have there's a very clear redemption. Brian has a bit of a redemption arc in that he is sort of responsible for Rome's time in prison. And obviously the last movie left off with Dom having to flee his home and his family from the cops because of Brian. Brian kind of goes through a redemption arc in this movie through clearing not only his own record but Roman's, and giving him a fresh start, because when you first meet Roman in this movie, he's like doing demolition derbies at a junkyard, living out of a trailer, and he has an ankle monitor. His life's rough. And I think it's very clear that, like, it would make even more sense if he was actually, this is a sequel, if he was clearing Dom's record and name after what he is responsible for, even if he does the right thing at the end of the first Fast. So that's why I think, like, this is probably a better movie if you don't have, because then you also don't have to spend time letting us get to know Rome, since we already know Dom, which means maybe you can flesh out the villain or Monica more. Maybe you don't even need Monica. You could have brought Mia back at that point, but it wouldn't have really made sense for Mia to be in Miami if Dom wasn't also there. Anyway, so I do think, like, short term, like, if I was sitting in the theater in 2003 watching this, I'd be like, I had a good time. I enjoyed that. I also just wish it was Dominic Toretto. But, you know, benefit of knowing this was for the best.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird, I guess, because looking back, I guess to me it feels like Brian's character was meant to be the core, like, crux of this whole franchise. And in the end, future-wise, it ends up being Dom. So, like, it feels a little weird, partially also looking back on it that way. But that's why, to me, it doesn't. It feels like it should have been written in as Dom, no matter what. Like, to me, back then, it should have been Dom, and they just probably didn't have access to Vin Diesel for, like you said, whatever reason. But, like, I also find it perfectly fine that if I were looking back then too, because, like, I guess not fine in, like, the way that, like, I would have wanted Dom more if I were back then in 2000 and whatever the fuck. But, like, I guess to me, it is sort of me taking into account that, like, when you look back, it seems like they more wanted to make Brian the main character of everything, and that changes even further when you get to the third one. So, like, this franchise is weird. I find it so strange because it feels like for these first two, Brian's supposed to be the main character. Then you get the third Fast movie, and it's not about any of the characters we've met. God, it's so weird to think about. But, like, yeah, it feels like they tried to make Brian the main character and him be the draw of everybody. But in the end, I feel like it would have been a much. I don't know what I'm trying to say with this. I feel like it would have been a better transition if Dom were there, especially to have, like, since Brian can't be the main character anymore with any of the movies. I'm just trying to look back on this and think of it like, what if Dom were there?
I mean, he's a fantastic improv.
Oh yeah.
It's honestly almost like every subsequent movie became fan fiction based off the movie before.
It's so. I mean, like, I'm still trying to think. It's like, looking back at this franchise and where it's come from is so weird because, like, I can hear Matt's cat.
God damn it!
Looking back at this and then it immediately jumping to Tokyo Drift and, like, having no connection to the other two, it just makes me feel like, yeah, like you said, every movie is a fan fiction that came before it, and even then it feels like it kind of makes me curious as to, like, if after this their idea for doing Fast and Furious was that they wanted it to be kind of like an anthology thing. And these two just happen to cover the same characters. Obviously, that's not what happens in the future, but, like, I feel like I'm taking way too big of a future look at this than I should be. But, like, it's just interesting. It's interesting to look back at this movie and think about that, and think about, like, what this movie could have been like if Dom were there, because it feels like it was written with Dom in mind, and then all of a sudden it's Roman. But we also get Roman out of this, which to me is like the bigger improvement. I can go a movie without Vin Diesel and get one of my favorite supporting characters.
It definitely worked out in the end.
Yeah.
But I can kind of get your point about how it would have made a lot more narrative sense if Dom was there. But I felt like this was like a necessary step because one, it does pay off in the end because Tyrese Gibson is great, but also the fact that like it kind of allowed them to see what worked and what didn't, and clearly they learned a lesson, especially like down the line as they leaned into more of their strengths, especially when it comes to like character chemistry and the narrative, like the whole tone starts to change. Although there's a few more bumps, especially with 4, I believe. Or was it 3? I forget.
No, it's
Which one's
4.
the one? It was 4?
Who's
Yeah, it was
Tokyo
like
Drift?
4.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Four's the,
3's like
four's
Tokyo
the
Drift
one
is
that
amazing.
kind of sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
4's like the bump in the road, but then after that, like, they kind of like took everything that they learned and, funneled that into the masterpiece of 5, but we'll get to that down the line.
I mean, 4. I mean, not 4. 5, 6, and 7 are a hell of a 3-movie run, but like Matt said, we'll get to that down the line. That said, it is interesting because it's like going back to what Sean said. It's like it almost feels like they made the first 2 with the intention of it being like a franchise, a regular franchise with continuity. And then it seems like they almost abandoned that to go for like an anthology route with Tokyo Drift, and then they were like, never mind.
Which it also leads me to believe they could have just really wanted to experiment, and like this movie feels like it's also part of that too, where like they wanted to experiment with a more comedic tone, and so like it makes me much more appreciative that they're just willing to do random shit.
Hey, I think everyone should do random shit.
My understanding is it was kind of more or less the same reason Vin Diesel wasn't in this one. Is they made the first, they wanted to make a sequel, they couldn't get Diesel back. They made money again, they wanted to make a third, they couldn't get anyone back, basically.
They couldn't get Diesel back.
So then they went, well, we still want to make one of these things, and that's why it also like books the naming convention and goes to like a subtitle rather than a 3 or anything, to make it kind of because it stands alone type of thing, aside from one post-credit scene cameo. So it really is just kind of like weird luck and fortune that this thing like kept alive long enough that it all looped together and all the characters met. Because otherwise, yeah, I don't know what they would have done. Like, I don't know if there was ever a point where Fast 4 was going to just be a Tokyo Drift sequel, or if it was just going to be its own thing like Tokyo Drift was. But eventually, yeah. But the reason like 2 is different than 1 and 3 is different than 2 is just because they couldn't get casts back.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely, the whole thing, like Jake said, giving great improv, they definitely didn't have like the MCU plan throughout the whole decade. They were definitely kind of, you get the vibe that they were definitely kind of figuring it out as they went in terms of the tone and what they were doing and how many they were gonna make.
It's just unbelievable that it worked out. Like what you said before, how there were conflicting schedules, so they couldn't get, like a continuous cast for the first 3 movies. And the fact that the 3 movies are either like solid or good. Like Tokyo Drift is one of my personal favorites, at least from like a nostalgic standpoint. Like I remember like watching a bunch of the Fast and Furious movies, and Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift is always one that stuck out to me in my mind. I'm hoping it's not like a like a rose tinted glasses situation when we get back to it, and I'm really scared to go back and think to myself, oh, I actually don't like this movie. My childhood was a sham.
This movie, did you guys like the ending of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fitting for what it was.
It wasn't like anything special, but it definitely like hit the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, like as these movies get more grand, I think the endings get grander. But
Hmm.
this one, pretty simple plot, pretty simple bad guy, pretty simple ending. You
Yeah,
know?
it's all pretty. All that stuff's kind of basic and forgettable, but during it, you're just having a blast because Jerome and
Yeah.
Brian are fun.
Yeah, it's like, you don't necessarily remember the ending as like a great ending, but it's like gets the job done, sends it home. You remember the good times of the movie.
Sean,
Yeah,
I always. Oh, sorry, Sean.
no, fuck you.
Fuck you.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Damn. What a shame.
Uh,
I was gonna do.
Fuck you, you absolute garbage human. I can't even with you. This is bullshit. What? God damn it! Now I can't remember. Ah! Yo, fuck you. Continue,
Anyway,
bitch.
Well, I don't want to continue. I was gonna move into wrap up stuff, but you have more to say.
I did, but now I can't remember because you cut me off.
I didn't cut you off. We started at the same time.
Nope, I'm fucking you. That's it. You're done.
I kind of. More than our old format, I always feel like I know what the answer to this is gonna be, since we've all kind of watched like all of these in the same room together before. But do you guys recommend this one?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. If anything for the character interactions alone.
Yeah, this one's actually like I think one of the like low key one of my favorites because it's not one of the ones that you think about as one of the best ones, but it's just every time I watch it, it's funny and consistent.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few where like every time I don't want to say I forget about it, but it's not the one that's at the
It's
top
like
of my list when
it's
I
a
think of
sleeper.
when I think of Fast and Furious movies, but there is not a single time that I have watched this movie and I haven't genuinely enjoyed it and laughed.
Absolutely.
It's definitely something that's more mindless. Well, actually, that's most of the Fast and
They're
Furious
all
movies.
mindless.
Yeah, they're all
Excuse me,
mindless.
Matt?
Like this one, like more especially because the plot doesn't matters even less because the plot and characters are kind of boring. But what actually makes it great are the character interactions and Roman and Brian. So yeah. So yes, I do recommend it.
Yeah, agreed on everything. I recommend it. Like I said, I prefer the last one. I prefer Better Luck Tomorrow as well. But this is still a pretty decent follow up to the first Fast and Furious, and also just like on its own right, if you watched it standalone, pretty fun too. It's definitely a really, really simple movie. Like you can kind of get like I could have probably condensed that plot summary into like a paragraph. It's really basic. And the worst parts are definitely the villain being the most generic drug lord you could think of, and Monica being really underwritten. But if nothing else, she gives us moments where Rome gets to be catty. And he's definitely the highlight for me. I know I dropped my hot take earlier, but like he's clearly the highlight of the movie. He's absolutely hilarious, and Roman steals every scene he's in. Tyrese Gibson is seriously just like firing all cylinders comedically, and it's a good time. It's not something that's super memorable, but you're never going to be bored during it. Even so, it kind of I think Jason said sleeper. Like it's nowhere near my favorite for these franchise, but it's damn sure not the worst, and I've never had a bad time watching it.
It's so okay. You just reminded me that this is canonically after Better Luck Tomorrow, and it's kind of like a super like whiplash moment because it's so weird watching like a crime drama to this.
Yeah. And it's weird to even compare the two because you really can't.
No, it's literally impossible to compare the two.
Yeah, well, but I mean, Roman and Tej being introduced is easily my favorite part. of this movie, not only because they're great in their screen time in this movie, but also because of what it brings us later on in the franchise. Those two, seeing those two characters get brought into things is my favorite part of this movie. Least favorite part is that, I mean, they just kind of wasted Eva Mendes and didn't have a good villain either, but so be it. That didn't make the movie that much worse, in my opinion. And yeah, I recommend it, like we already said.
All right. I think that covers everyone. I think we're 12 for 12 now across our movies so far for this. Thank you to Alofett, ALOFETT, for the podcast artwork. Thank you to Jason, JASON, for the podcast music.
I made the podcast music. You can go listen to it on this podcast. And I'll put more music out eventually on SoundCloud, The Upsides. Also, my band, follow us on Instagram, Faraday Band PA.
Follow us, as in the podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. It's Culturally Illiterate Podcast. Illiterate_pod for any of our socials. If we have a social, that's the @ reach us at culturalliteratepod@gmail.com. Give us questions, give us comments, leave reviews on apps. Do all the stuff that you always ask for whenever you listen to a podcast. Next episode, we are covering the next installment of Fast and Furious. One that I guess Matt is apparently scared to revisit. And I hope he gets over it, because it's time to Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.